Hey guys, welcome back to Fantasy Hub. Today's story is one of my favorites.
It started on a Tuesday that felt like any other Tuesday in my cramped Brooklyn studio. I was elbow deep in color palettes, prepping for another commercial shoot, when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Need emergency makeup. Work. Can pay triple your rate tonight. Are you free? Triple rate. In New York, that's not a question, it's a prayer answered. I texted back immediately, when and where. The address led me to a converted warehouse in Dumbo, the kind of place where trust fund artists pretend to be starving while daddy's money pays the rent. But when the elevator doors opened on the seventh floor, I forgot about my cynicism entirely. The loft was breathtaking. Floor-to-ceiling windows caught the dying light, casting everything in that golden hour glow that photographers kill for. Canvases lined the walls, bold, angry strokes that seemed to pulse with their own energy. And there, standing with her, back to me, was the woman who would change everything. "You must be Emily," she said, turning around. "I'm Audrey. I've done makeup for models, actors, CEOs, people whose entire existence depends on how they look. But Audrey was different. She had this presence, this intensity that made you want to either run toward her or away from her. Dark hair fell in, waves past her shoulders and her eyes. God, her eyes were the color of storms. So I said, setting down my kit with shaking hands. I hoped she wouldn't notice. "What's the look? Corporate? Seductress? Runaway bride?" She laughed, this rich, throaty sound that sent heat straight through me. Something like that. Without ceremony, she began unbuttoning her shirt. "I need you to cover these. I've seen it all in my line of work. Surgery scars, birthmarks, the occasional hickey from a cheating husband. But when Audrey's shirt fell away, I actually gasped. Her torso was a canvas of violence, purple bruises blooming across her ribs, a particularly nasty one spreading from her collarbone to her shoulder blade. "Jesus," I whispered, my professional composure cracking. "What happened to you?" "I've got a gala tonight," she said, as casually as if she were discussing the weather. "With people who can't know I've been in a fight." My hands hovered over my kit, uncertain. This wasn't makeup, this was erasure. "Audrey, if someone did this to you, they didn't do it to me." She interrupted, and something in her voice made me look up. Her eyes were sharp, focused. "I did it to them." And just like that, I realized Audrey wasn't just an artist. She was a soldier. I worked in silence, my fingers tracing the edges of her injuries with color corrector and concealer. Each bruise told a story I wasn't sure I wanted to hear. The one on her shoulder was fresh, maybe hours old. The yellowing marks on her ribs spoke of battles fought days ago. "You're good at this," Audrey said, watching me work in the mirror I'd propped against an easel. "I've had practice." I kept my voice steady, professional. Though usually my client's damage is more emotional. She laughed again, but this time it was bitter. "Emotional damage is easier to hide. Physical scars are honest." "Is that what you do?" I asked, blending foundation across a particularly dark mark. "Fight? In a way." She was quiet for a moment. "Then there are people in this city who prey on women. They think they're untouchable because they wear suits and donate to charity. I make sure they understand they're not." I paused, brushed halfway to her skin. "You're a vigilante?" "I'm an artist," she said simply. "Violence is just another medium." The way she said it, so matter-of-fact, so utterly convinced, should have terrified me. Instead, I found myself leaning closer, breathing in her scent, paint and something darker, more dangerous. "There," I said finally, stepping back to admire my work. "You're perfect." She turned to face me, and I saw myself reflected in her eyes, flushed, breathless, completely out of my depth. "Perfect is boring," she said, "but invisible, that's useful." I shouldn't have gone. Should have taken my payment and gone home to my studio apartment, forgotten about the mysterious woman with the storm-colored eyes that Audrey had mentioned. The gala was at the Whitney, and I'd always wondered what those high society events were actually like. So I put on my best dress black, simple, forgettable, and found myself nursing a glass of wine in the corner of the museum's main gallery, watching Audrey work the room. She was magnetic. Donors gravitated toward her like moths to flame, hanging on her every word as she discussed her latest series. The bruises I'd so carefully concealed were completely invisible under the gallery's soft lighting. She looked like she belonged in this world of champagne and carefully curated conversations. That's when I saw him. He was older, maybe 60, with silver hair and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He approached Audrey with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no, leaning in close enough that I could see his lips moving near her ear. "The coalition thanks you for your insights on those feminist groups," he said, his voice carrying across the gallery's hum. My wineglass slipped from my fingers, shattering on the polished floor. Heads turned that I barely noticed. All I could see was Audrey's face for just a second. Her mask slipped, and I saw something that looked like disgust before she was smiling again, playing the part. She excused herself from the conversation and was beside me in seconds, her hand on my arm. "Bathroom," she hissed. Now, I let her guide me through the crowd, my mind reeling. The coalition, I'd heard whispers about them. Anti-feminist groups that operated in shadows, spreading their poison through seemingly legitimate channels. And Audrey was working with them. The bathroom was empty, all marble and soft lighting. Audrey checked under the stalls before turning to face me, her composure finally cracking. "It's not what you think," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You're infiltrating them?" I couldn't keep the accusation out of my voice. "Those women trust you." Her hands shot out, grabbing my wrists. "Listen to me," she said urgently. "I'm exposing them. They're planting moles in women's shelters, in support groups, in activist organizations. I needed proof." She pressed my palms against her chest, where her heart was racing beneath the makeup I'd so carefully applied. "I've been undercover for 8 months. Do you know what it's like sitting in rooms full of men who think women are objects? Smiling while they talk about managing domestic violence victims?" Her eyes were wild, desperate. "Those bruises? They're from fights I picked with their security when I got too close to something they didn't want me to see." I stared at her, my anger wavering. "You're telling me you're some kind of— what? Undercover journalist?" "I'm telling you I'm tired of watching them hurt people," she said. "And I'm telling you I might have found a way to stop them." The bathroom door opened and we sprang apart like guilty teenagers. A woman in pearls gave us a curious look before disappearing into a stall. Audrey grabbed my hand. "Come on," she said. "We need to talk." We ended up at an all-night diner in Queens, the kind of place that served coffee strong enough to wake the dead and pie that tasted like childhood. Audrey ordered 3 slices and pushed one toward me. "I need you to understand something," she said, cutting into her pie with mechanical precision. "This isn't a game. These people have money, influence, connections. They can destroy lives with a phone call." "Then why are you doing this?" She was quiet for a long moment. "Because someone has to. Because I have privileges they don't. I'm white, I'm wealthy, I can move through their circles without raising suspicion. And because ... She looked up, meeting my eyes. "Because I've seen what happens when no one fights back." She pulled out her phone, scrolling through photos. "This is Sarah. She was in a support group for survivors of domestic violence. The coalition planted a mole who befriended her, gained her trust, then fed information back to her abuser. He found her safe house." The photo showed a young woman with kind eyes and a tentative smile. "Where is she now?" dead. Audrey's voice was flat. He killed her 3 weeks ago. I pushed my pie away, suddenly nauseous. Jesus, there are others, dozens of them. Women who thought they were safe, who trusted the wrong person because that person had been trained to be trustworthy. Audrey's hands were shaking now. I have their names, their methods, their entire operation. But I need a way to expose them that can't be buried or discredited. What does that have to do with me? She reached across the table, her fingers brushing mine. You're an artist. You understand transformation, illusion, the power of image. I need your help to show the world who these people really are. 3 days later, I found myself in Audrey's loft at 3 a.m., surrounded by photographs and documents spread across every surface. The evidence was overwhelming financial records, email chains, photographs of coalition members meeting with known abusers. My next exhibit is in 2 weeks, Audrey said, pacing the length of the loft like a caged animal. The theme is masks and mirrors. I want to use it to expose them. She stopped in front of a bulletin board covered with photos of coalition. Members, look at these faces. They're chameleons. They change their appearance, their personas, depending on who they're targeting. I studied the photos. She was right. The same man who appeared scholarly and gentle in one image looked predatory and cruel in another. You want me to recreate their transformations? I want you to undo them. Her grin was fierce, predatory. Show who they really are underneath all the pretense. She moved closer, crowding me against the kitchen counter. This close, I could smell her perfume mixed with coffee and something darker, the scent of someone who lived on the edge. Can you do that? Can you strip away their masks? I nodded, not trusting my voice. She leaned in, and I thought she might kiss me, but instead she whispered, "Then let's get to work." The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of coffee, late nights, and the kind of focused intensity I'd never experienced before. Audrey's loft became our war room, walls covered with photos, sketches, and makeup tests. I studied each coalition member like they were a puzzle to be solved. Richard Morrison, the man from the gala, had perfected the grandfatherly professor look, wire-rimmed glasses, gentle smile, cardigan sweaters. But in surveillance photos Audrey had taken, he looked different. Harder. The kindness in his eyes revealed itself as calculated coldness. How do you make someone look evil without being obvious about it? I asked one night, frustrated after my 20th attempt to capture Morrison's true nature. You don't make them look evil, Audrey said, studying my work. You just remove the things that make them look good. She was right. It wasn't about adding shadows or harsh lines. It was about subtracting warmth, softening the elements that created trustworthiness. A slight adjustment to the angle of his eyebrows, a different shade of lipstick that made his smile look more like a smirk. There, I said, stepping back from the mirror where I'd been practicing on a male model Audrey had hired. What do you think? She studied the transformation, her expression unreadable. It's perfect. He looks exactly like he did when he was describing his favorite ways to break shelter volunteers. The matter-of-fact way she said it sent a chill through me. You were in the room when he said that? I was in many rooms, she said quietly. I heard things that will give me nightmares for the rest of my life. That night, after the model left, I found Audrey standing at the windows, staring out at the city lights. She looked smaller somehow, more vulnerable. Hey, I said softly, approaching her like I might approach a wounded animal. You okay? She's didn't turn around. Do you know what it's like pretending to agree with people who think you're subhuman? Laughing at jokes about rape, nodding along when they discuss strategies for silencing victims? I moved closer, my hand finding hers. You don't have to do this alone. I've been alone for 8 months, she said. I forgot what it felt like to have someone who understood. She turned then, and I saw tears in her eyes for the first time. I'm scared, Emily, not of them, of what this has done to me. I look in the mirror, and sometimes I can't tell where the mask ends and I begin. I reached up, cupping her face in my hands. I can help you remember. Our first kiss tasted like coffee and desperation, and something that might have been hope. When we broke apart, she was crying in earnest. I'm sorry, she whispered. I should have told you everything from the beginning. You're telling me now, I said. That's what matters. We made love that night on her studio floor, surrounded by the evidence of other people's crimes. It should have been sorted wrong. Somehow, instead, it felt like the first honest thing either of us had done in months. Opening night arrived with all the fanfare of a small war. The gallery was packed, critics, collectors, and the curious public mingling with champagne and whispered conversations. Outside, protesters had gathered, though I wasn't sure what they were protesting yet. The centerpiece of the exhibit was a triptych titled Truth and Consequences. Each panel showed the same 5 coalition members, their public faces, their hidden agendas captured in secret photographs, and finally, their true selves revealed through my makeup artistry. The effect was devastating. Richard Morrison's transformation from kindly professor to cold predator was so stark that several visitors actually gasped when they saw it. Margaret Whitmore, who presented herself as a maternal advocate for women's rights, looked genuinely sinister when stripped of her carefully constructed warmth. This is libel, I heard someone hiss behind me. They can't prove any of this. I turned to see a woman in an expensive suit speaking urgently into her phone. No, I don't care what it costs. I want this shut down tonight. Audrey appeared at my side, her hand finding mine. Let them try, she said loudly enough for the woman to hear. Every piece of evidence is documented and verified. We have recordings, financial records, testimony from victims. The woman's face went white. She pushed through the crowd toward the exit, still talking rapidly into her phone. Friend of yours? I asked. Coalition lawyer, Audrey said. I was wondering when they'd show up. As if summoned by her words, a commotion erupted near the entrance. More protesters had arrived, and these ones looked organized. They carried signs reading "Stop the Lies" and "Fake Art, Real Damage." How did they mobilize so fast? I asked. They've probably had a response team ready since they figured out I was the leak, Audrey said. Which means she was interrupted by a reporter shoving a microphone in her face. Miss Chen, aren't you afraid of retaliation for these serious accusations? Audrey pulled me close, her arm around my waist. Let them try, she said, her voice carrying across the gallery. The truth doesn't disappear just because powerful people don't like it. Cameras flashed, and I realized that whatever happened next, there was no going back. We were committed now, our faces and names linked to this moment forever. The next few hours were chaos. The protesters grew more aggressive, eventually requiring police intervention. 3 major news outlets picked up the story, and social media exploded with debates about art, activism, and the ethics of exposure. By midnight, the gallery was empty except for us and the security guards. We sat on the floor in front of the triptych, exhausted but strangely exhilarated. So what happens now? I asked. Now we wait, Audrey said. The FBI is already investigating based on the evidence I provided. It'll take time, but some of these people are going to prison. And us? She looked at me with those storm-colored eyes. What do you want to happen with us? I thought about it. 3 weeks ago, I'd been a makeup artist trying to make rent. Now I was what? A co-conspirator? An activist? A woman in love with someone who fought battles I was only beginning to understand. I want to stay, I said finally. I want to help, not just with makeup, with everything. She kissed me then, soft and tender and full of promise. It won't be easy. They'll come after us, try to discredit us, make our lives difficult. Good thing I'm good at making people look like something they're not, I said. Maybe it's time I learned how to help people look like exactly what they are. She laughed, and for the first time since I'd met her, it sounded purely joyful. I love you, Emily. I love you too, I said, and meant it completely. The next morning brought vindication and chaos in equal measure. The FBI had arrested 3 coalition members before dawn, and 2 more were in custody by noon. The evidence Audrey had gathered was ironclad financial records, recorded conversations, documented proof of their infiltration tactics. But victory came with a price. My studio was broken into, my equipment destroyed. Audrey's loft was vandalized, her paintings slashed. We found dead rats in my mailbox and received phone calls in the middle of the night with no one on the other. And maybe we should leave the city, I said one morning, surveying the damage to my makeup kit. Start over somewhere else. If we run, they win, Audrey said. Besides, I have work to finish. She was right. The coalition was bigger than the few members we'd exposed. There were other cities, other operations, other women who needed protection. And now that I understood the stakes, I couldn't walk away. We moved in together, combining our resources and our determination. My apartment became our base of operations, files and photographs organized with military precision. I learned to use more than just makeup. I studied voice modulation, body language, the subtle arts of disguise and infiltration. You're good at this, Audrey said one evening, watching me practice changing my appearance. Have you ever considered that maybe you were meant for more than just making people look pretty? I caught her eye in the mirror. You mean like making them look honest? I mean like making sure they can't hide anymore? 6 months later, we'd built something unprecedented. A network of women artists, journalists, activists, survivors, all working together to expose the men who preyed on the vulnerable. We called ourselves the Collective, and we were everywhere. I became the face changer, the one who could make our undercover operatives look like anyone they needed to be. Audrey remained the strategist, the one who could think 3 moves ahead of our targets. Together, we were unstoppable. The coalition tried to regroup, but every time they thought they'd found new hiding places, we were there. Every time they recruited new members, we had their photos and their methods before they could do damage. How do you always know what they're going to do? I asked Audrey one night as we reviewed intelligence from our latest operation. I know because I think like them, she said. I had to survive 8 months undercover. The difference is I remember why I'm doing this. She showed me a letter from Sarah's mother, thanking us for bringing her daughter's killers to justice. This is why. So no other mother has to write a letter like this. But the work took its toll. Audrey began having nightmares, waking up screaming, about rooms full of men who looked at her like she was prey. I started seeing threats everywhere, jumping at shadows, suspicious of everyone. We're becoming paranoid, I told her one morning after I'd called the police because our neighbor's TV was too loud. Maybe we need to take a break. There is no break, she said. There are still women dying because these men think they're untouchable. We stop when they stop. I wanted to argue, but I knew she was right. The work was addictive, the sense of purpose overwhelming. Every woman we saved, every predator we exposed, felt like a victory against the darkness. But I was losing myself in it. I looked in the mirror one day and realized I couldn't remember the last time I'd done makeup just for beauty, just for the joy of transformation. Everything had become about truth, about justice, about the war we were fighting. I need to do something just for me, I told Audrey that night. Something that doesn't involve exposing anyone or saving anyone. Something that's just art. She looked up from the files she was reviewing. What did you have in mind? I want to paint you, I said. Your real face, not a disguise or a transformation, just you. She was quiet for a long moment. I don't remember what that looks like anymore. Then let me help you remember. I set up an easel in the corner of our bedroom, away from the files and photographs and evidence of other people's crimes. For the first time in months, I mixed colors for beauty instead of deception. Sit still, I said, sketching the basic outline of her face. And don't think about anything except this moment. I don't know how to do that anymore, she admitted. Then let me do it for you. I painted her the way I saw her that first day, fierce, beautiful, dangerous, but also vulnerable. I captured the storm in her eyes, but also the warmth that appeared when she thought no one was looking. I painted her scars, not the ones from fights, but the deeper ones that came from caring too much about other people's pain. You're beautiful, I said as I worked, my brush tracing the line of her jaw. Even with everything you've been through, you're still beautiful. I feel like I'm disappearing, she whispered. Like I'm becoming just a collection of other people's stories. You're not disappearing, I said. You're becoming more yourself than you've ever been. You're just scared to see it. When I finished, she stared at the portrait for a long time without speaking. Is that really how you see me? That's how you are, I said. Strong and vulnerable, and absolutely magnificent. She cried then, really cried, for the first time since that night in her loft. I held her while she grieved for the woman she'd been before, the one who didn't know how cruel the world could be. I love you, she said when the tears stopped. Not just for what you do, but for who you are. For seeing me when I couldn't see myself. I love you too, I said. All of you. The fighter and the artist and the woman who's brave enough to care about strangers. That was 3 years ago. The collective is still active, still fighting, still winning more battles than we lose. The coalition is effectively destroyed, their leadership in prison, their operations exposed and dismantled. But the work continues. There are always new threats, new predators, new women who need protection. We've trained others to take over the day-to-day operations, and while we're still involved, we're no longer the only ones carrying the weight. I opened a new studio last month, focusing on transformative makeup for survivors of abuse. Women who want to reclaim their faces, their identities, their power. I help them become whoever they want to be, no judgment, no questions asked. Audrey is painting again, real art instead of just evidence. Her latest series is called Phoenix Rising, and it shows women emerging from ashes, transformed but not broken. The critics love it, but more importantly, the women who see it feel seen. We're planning a wedding for next spring. Nothing elaborate, just our friends, our chosen family, the women who've stood beside us through everything. I've already picked out the makeup I'll wear, something that makes me look exactly like myself. No masks, no disguises, just the woman I've become. Do you ever regret it? Audrey asked me last night as we sat on our roof, watching the city lights flicker in the distance. Getting involved with all of this, I thought about it. I thought about the woman I'd been 3 years ago, worried. About rent and commercial shoots, and whether I was wasting my talent on surface beauty. I thought about the woman I am now, scarred but stronger, tired but purposeful. No, I said finally. I regret that it was necessary. But I don't regret doing it. She nodded, understanding. I used to think art was about creating beauty. Now I know it's about revealing truth. Maybe it's both, I said. Maybe the most beautiful thing you can do is show the world what it really looks like, even when it's ugly. We sat in comfortable silence, two women who'd found each other in the darkness and chosen to create light. Tomorrow there would be new challenges, new fights, new women who needed our help. But tonight we were just ourselves, no masks, no disguises, just the faces we'd chosen to show the world. For the first time in my life, I didn't need makeup to feel beautiful. I was already seen, already known, already loved for exactly who I was, and that, I realized, was the most powerful transformation of all. The sound of the city hummed below us, full of stories waiting to be told, truths waiting to be revealed. We'd spend our lives uncovering them, one face at a time, one story at a time, one woman at a time. But for now, we were home.